the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing.
Hello guys and welcome to another video. First I will start with the installation tip. Please plug in the power adapter before installing the card in your PC rig. This way you'll avoid a lot of issues that you can see on the internet. Here are the settings for Witcher 3. This is the game with the update, the one that includes the ray tracing. Now I will be showing the area where the benchmarks are done. I'll do 3 runs with both cards, and this will happen for any other game that you'll see in the results later on. The area that you see here, it's at the beginning of the game. It's the first village that you see. It's not an area with a lot of population, a lot of people, but it's one that is kind of demanding in the sense that when you stroll around the city, the frames drop a lot compared to when you are, like for example, here in front of the pond or the river. I don't know exactly what is this. Now let's move to another game, a battle royale game that is Fortnite. Here are the settings. I'm including Fortnite here because it's the only game available with Unreal Engine 5.1. So here is the area that I did a benchmark. I think it's an area with some trees and some rocks there. I'm going there because usually it's not full of people, and this area of the game looks quite nice. I must confess, the red color here with the green one, I think this game can look quite well with everything maxed out, but this is not the settings that you should play when you play competitive games. Moving on to control, this is the settings that I use for the benchmark, and I'm going to show you now the area where I do the benchmark. So it's an area at the beginning of the game. I'm just walking from downstairs from the front desk to this area and moving a little bit to the offices there in front. This is the area used for checking the difference between the two cards. Now let's move to another game. A Plague Tale. This is the settings that I used to do the benchmark, and I will show you next the area that I'm actually doing the benchmark. So it's an area at the beginning of the game when actually they play hide and seek, and here I'm checking both cards. It's not the most demanding area, but it has trees, no rats, and not a lot of people, so I think this is one area that probably could be improved for later comparisons, but for now we'll keep this one. Also want to mention that this game looks quite well and plays well on both cards, and the performance is quite good on both of them. Now let's move to Gotham Knights. Here's the area that I'm doing the benchmark. It's at the beginning of the game, and I checked both cards in this area. Now let me show you the settings that I use for these benchmarks. I usually have everything maxed out except blur, lens, so this applies to all games. And with these settings, both cards perform well on this game, so I think it runs quite well, given you have a good CPU to push the cards. Now we'll be looking at some benchmark results. I will not include all results because this video will be too long. You will see here the graphics setting for some games and the results from runs without recording. I'm running max settings without lens flare, motion blur, and no upscaling like DLSS or FSR. As I have only one PC, if I want to do a benchmark run and record it, I will lose around 10% performance, more or less. As I want to provide accurate benchmark results, what will you see in the overall results section is based on the average of 3 runs without recording them. As I want to focus on the price performance and some discussion about general prices and where the market is heading, I decided to skip this part of adding all internal benchmark runs and results. So let's look at the results, the comparison between a 3080 and a 4080. Here, most of the games I use internal benchmarks, and a few of them that I don't have them, I just noted here exactly where I am doing the benchmarks, so you guys can know and can actually compare. All of the benchmarks are run at 1440p with high settings, so and ray tracing enabled. So let's look a bit at the results and see the comparison between the 3080 10GB version and the 4080. Some games exhibit a bigger increase than others, but we have good results here. I mean, if you look at the comparison between 3080 and the 4080 average frames when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, you see the 3080 has 132 and the 4080 is 159. So the increase is not that high, there's that large, but it is probably it's one of the games that you can see here when it comes to performance increase. Percentage wise, we have a less of an increase when compared to other games. So for example, if you look at Watch Dogs Legion, the difference between a 4080 and the 3080, the 10GB version, again, it's above 40%. So this is quite good. As you can see here, we have like the average frames per second for 3080 is around 57, and when we look at the average frames per second when it comes to a 4080, it's 82. So we have a big increase in performance from one generation to the other. When it comes to Hitman 3, we have again around 46. Yeah, but when it comes to the lows, probably had some issues or some I don't know, stutters, because the minimum frame rate was not, the difference was not that high. As you can see, 26 and 31. Cyberpunk here, we have an increase from 40 to 58, which will be like around, on average, when it comes to average, around 43%, 44, which sounds good, but actually I was expecting a little bit more, in the sense that I was expecting to have to be able to run the game maxed with Psycho, everything, ray tracing Psycho, and be able to run the game without FSR, because I'm using FSR in this game. But unfortunately, as you can see here, the minimum frame rates with the 4080 is 45.6. So I can't say that you actually can play this game without enabling FSR maxed out. Shadow of Tomb Raider, we have again an increase of 50% when it comes to every frame rate between the old and the new card. As you can see here, we have 128 and 85 frames per second when it comes to that, and also when it comes to the minimum frame rates, we have a 4080 with 99 frames per second, and we have like the 3080 hovering around 66. This is the minimum, and as you can see here, it's reflected. When it comes to a Plague Tale, we have an increase of around 36% when it comes to the average frames, but the minimum frame rate is not a big improvement over the old generation. When we move to Gotham Knights, as you can see, we have 124 and 3080 could reach around 109. When we look at Witcher, the difference between the old GPU and the new GPU, it's in line with what we see in Cyberpunk 2077. So from the same behavior from both games that are built by the same company. When it comes to Fortnite, the game is playable when you use everything maxed out, when you play the game with everything maxed out, but you still have stutters, and I don't think this is because of the GPU or the CPU, it's because of the game. Dying Light, the improvement was okay, it's around 44% between the old and the new. So as you can see here, we have an average FPS of 85, close to 86, and for the 3080 it's close to 60. So good results for both cards here, but I think the experience with the 4080 is a lot better than the one with the 3080. But for this game, can enable upscaling, and you can actually enjoy the game on both cards without any issue. This is a new entry, Callisto Protocol. As you can see here, you have 74 average FPS, but you have hiccups in the sense that you have stutters, and you can feel the difference between 74 and when it drops to 34. The 3080 can drop as far as 22 frames per second, so that is quite low. And here, as you can see, the increase between in percentage between these two GPUs, it's 35, 33 when it comes to average, and a little bit more than 50% when it comes to the minimum frames. Moving on to Total War Saga Troy, the increase in performance is quite minor. It's more or less in line with Gotham Knights and Guardians of the Galaxy. I think these games have better increase in performance when we move from when we use a better CPU, but we have one of the lowest performance increase percentage wise between all games tested here. As you can see, we have 80 on the average on the 4080, and we have 77 the average when it comes to the old card, the 3080 10GB version. Final game that I checked was Control. So as you can see here, we have the average when it comes to the 4080, it's around 111 frames per second, and when we look at the 3080, we have around 82.3. So I think in this game both cards perform quite well. I mean, the experience playing on both cards is quite good with everything maxed out, and I don't see that the 3080 is actually limited in this game. It's actually can play the game quite well with everything maxed out, and I didn't feel like stutters or any issue with the older card. Here we have the average increase of performance when it comes to 4080 over the 3080 10GB version. So when it comes to the average FPS, we have 35.14, and when it comes to the minimum FPS, it's around 32. I was expecting to be a little bit more. Bear in mind, if you have the 3080 with 12GB version, that difference will be even smaller, around probably between 25 and 30%. One thing I want to point out is, as you saw here, this one is disabled. So let's have a look at the price increase of the 4080 over the 3080. This is the cheapest 4080 that I could find at the time of filming this. It's the exact card that I have. And now let's check the price for the 3080 and see what we can find at this time. So as you can see here, I found a shop that has more 3080 in stock, and this is the cheapest one that we can buy at the time of recording this video. And this is how the graph looks like when I enable the price increase. So as you can see, we have around 35% performance increase over the 3080 10GB version, with almost 72% price increase. So you guys tell me if this is actually it's worth it. I believe this is why Nvidia tried to price 4080 so high, because they have a big market share and they think that they can actually find people to buy the 4080s at such a high price, when actually it's better to buy a 4090 than actually going for a 4080. Here we can see that Nvidia had some issues at mid-year 2022 when they actually tried to slash orders from TSMC, but TSMC was not willing to do that to help them. So this may be another reason why we have such high prices for the 4080. This is quite recent news, in the sense that AMD, Intel, and Nvidia reportedly slash orders with TSMC because they are trying to slash orders and to not have a big stock of graphics cards. So this is why I think that in mid 2023 probably the graphics card prices will be better, and also probably they will launch the 4080 Ti. I don't know exactly when, and probably they will slot it in the same price as a 4080, and they will reduce the price of the 4080 because they will try to sell as much as possible a fully enabled chip that will be the 4080. . So if we try to look for the competition, the RX 7900 XTX is nowhere to be seen. At this time in Spain, if we try to find one at a reasonable price, we cannot find it. I think the 7900 XTX is a good card if you manage to buy it at a discount of 150 to 200 from RTX 4080. You have good raster performance and close enough ray tracing performance, I mean around 20% less than the 4080. The RTX 4080 is a good card, a generational improvement over the RTX 3080 10GB version. It has 16GB of VRAM, which will be more than enough for the years to come, and good ray tracing performance. The problem is the price. As it stands now, it is overpriced, not selling, and the competition, the RX 7900 XTX, can be a good alternative to it if the price difference is somewhere around 200 USD euros. But who is willing to pay around 1,400 or more for a RTX 4080? Probably can afford a 4090, that is around 500 more, as this is the first 80 series card that is priced so high. Thanks for watching and see you guys in the next one. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel and press the thumbs up button.